Before I get started showing you how I do the chicken divan freezer meals, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how I go about making freezer meals in my home. I don't do things the way a lot of hardcore freezer meal cooking moms do. I don't spend a whole day, I don't even spend a half day on it. The way that I normally freezer cook is I have 4 or 5 bulk recipes that I do, and I will cook one of those probably about every 2 to 3 weeks and make enough to put at least 2 to 3 extra meals worth in the freezer. So the chicken divan is one of those. Lasagna is another one. Chili is another one. I can't think of the others, but I'll also do muffins. So instead of spending a full day and just completely exhausting myself, and then honestly, if I do that, if I spend a full day cooking, it usually takes me 2 or 3 days to recover, which to me, and the way that I do things around here, it's inefficient. So that's just not how I like to do it. If I just do one every 2 to 3 weeks, then I always have backup meals in the refrigerator, or not the refrigerator, in the freezer. I always have at least something that I can pull out. I'm never gonna have a whole month's worth of freezer meals, but that's okay because I don't really need that either. So it is nice though to always have something in the freezer to pull out, and not only for our own meals, but say, a mom from church needs a meal brought to her. It's so much easier to just pull something out of the freezer at the last minute than to have to stop and cook, a nice meal for another mom who might need it. So that's why I like to keep the backup in there. Now, I will say one thing that I really enjoy doing and that I do on a regular basis is I go ahead and do bulk cooking when it comes to ground beef. I'll buy, the big packs from Costco, or I'll buy a big 10-pound bulk. I don't know what they're called. They're like the long, so are they called chubs? I don't like that word. But it's 10 pounds from Restaurant Depot. So I will buy that and I'll go ahead and brown it, and then I'll go ahead and weigh it out and freeze that in meal-sized portions. And that makes it so much easier when I'm making pasta, when I'm making tacos, anything like that. And the other thing that I do religiously is I'll buy 4 or 5 rotisserie chickens from Costco. I'll take all of the meat off the bones and I'll weigh that out also into meal-sized portions. Now, in our family, I've been trying to get away from eating tons and tons of meat. I really prefer to feed my family closer to a plant-based diet. I would by no means call my husband and children vegetarian or even close to plant-based, honestly. But the only reason I'm saying this is to let you know that I don't serve a ton of meat at every meal. So those freezer bags of ground beef that I do, I weigh out 12 ounces for one meal, and that's split between, I don't eat it, but for the rest of my family, that's split into 10 portions, all the way from, a grown man and several teenage boys down to, the toddlers. So when you do the math, it's really not a lot of meat. But I always supplement that with beans, so they're still getting plenty of protein. The same goes for chicken. I measure out 12 ounces of chicken for casseroles and things like that. Now that makes my life so much easier. Really, I use the chicken and the ground beef a lot more than I use the freezer meals, and that's why I always make sure to have it on hand. So that's the way that I do it around here, and it makes life easy and it fits into my life. I know that a lot of moms are really fond of having a full day and doing that, and that's great that that works for them. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If that's what works best for you and your family and your life, then totally do it. But this is one of those things, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, which for me is nice because it would not work for me to do it that way. So I just wanted to present one more way that you can go about getting meals in your freezer, if you don't have a full day, or if you don't have 2 or 3 days to do it. And that's the way that I do it, and that's the way that it works for us. So without further ado, this is how I make the chicken divan, and this really is a recipe that everyone in my family loves. So I hope that you enjoy it too. Let me know in the comments if you've made it, or if you've made something similar. Also, feel free to link up to other really great freezer meals that you have made before, because I'm always looking for a few more to add to my repertoire. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
It is the Saturday before Christmas, and I am finally getting my freezer cooking done. This is all of the 5 rotisserie chickens that I bought at Costco, and I'm going to be using probably about a third of it, and I'll be putting the rest in the freezer. So let's see, over here I have the wild rice, and I use a blend from Trader Joe's, which is really nice. It doesn't have any artificial flavors added to it, but I didn't have enough. The recipe calls for 7 cups. So I had to supplement with the basmati rice that I have. So it's gonna be a mix of both, but I need to get these done in the freezer, and there is no way I'm driving over to Trader Joe's the Saturday before Christmas because it's gonna be crazy over there. So far so good. Okay, so out of 5 rotisserie chickens from Costco, I have 6 bags here, 1 pound weighed out each, to put in the freezer for meals. And then this is the leftover that's gonna go in the chicken divans. So the recipe makes 6 trays of chicken divan, but we take 2 per meal. So all in all, 5 rotisserie chickens this time will have gotten us 9 meals, which is pretty good considering that they're $5 each. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to be working on chopping up the broccoli just a little bit. I like to still leave it kind of big, like this size. So I'm just going to be going through in here and taking the larger pieces and cutting them in half because I don't like it to be too fine. I ran the frozen broccoli through the colander with hot water. I'm doing 2 of these 2-pound bags, so 4 pounds total. The recipe actually only calls for 8 cups, but I'd rather my family get more vegetables than that. So I'm adding in the extra. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop up all the broccoli, 2 bags of that, and then it'll be time to mix everything together. Okay, so here's all of the broccoli. Excuse me. Roughly chopped, not too small. One thing that you want to remember after you run your broccoli, your frozen broccoli through the colander, is to squeeze it out real well, because if you don't squeeze it out, the florets, they hold the water like a sponge. So if you don't squeeze it out, your chicken divan is going to end up being runny, and that's disgusting. So just make sure to give it a good squeeze before you chop it, and then just a quick rough chop. If you buy fresh broccoli, you don't need to worry about that. But if you like to save a little bit of time like I do, then go ahead and get the frozen. Okay, this is 2 cups of light sour cream, and then it's 32 ounces of light mayonnaise. And then it's 1 tablespoon of garlic and 1 tablespoon of onion powder. I'm gonna mix this up first, and then I'm gonna be adding in the cheddar cheese. Okay, that's all mixed up now. I also added salt and pepper. Now, the recipe calls for 4 cups of cheddar cheese, but somebody's been in my cheddar cheese, so I'm just going to use what I have today, which has been the whole theme of the whole day. And this is probably about 3 cups, but it'll still turn out delicious. So I'm going to mix this up, and then after I'm done with that, my rice should be pretty close to done. This is the rice all cooked now. This is what 7 dry cups yields. It's a lot. I use my gigantic bowl. I think this is 32 or 36 ounces. I got it at the restaurant supply store, but it's enormous. See, that's my hand for scale. They actually have these on Amazon though. I'll link to it in the comments. So I'm putting the rice in here so that it can start to cool off, because I like to mix everything together with my hands. It just makes it so much faster. So I'm letting that cool off while I finish chopping up the broccoli, and then I'm gonna get it all mixed together and put it in the pans. Okay, this is all of the ingredients all mixed up. I have to use my hands because it's just so much, and it takes so much longer if you try and do it with a spoon. So I just get in and get it all mixed up with my fingers. Now I'm going to be putting it in the trays. This recipe makes 6 trays full. Our family eats 2 for 1 dinner, so this will get me 3 different dinners, and we're actually going to be eating 2 of those tonight. So I'll only be putting 4 total in the freezer for a total of 2 extra meals. So the way that I do it is I use a glass 2-cup measuring cup. I guess I could use the 4-cup, but it's just easier to use the 2-cup. I use this a lot as a scooper in the kitchen, and doing it one-handed isn't the
Easiest thing in the world, right? Okay, so just get a nice scoop so that it can be somewhat the same amount in each tray. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those up. I'm not going to make you watch that because it'll take forever, and it'll take me twice as long doing it left-handed. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, they're all filled up now, so now I'm just going to take my spoon and smooth each one out. And then I'll be putting 2 in the oven and covering the rest and putting them in the freezer. They have to, if they're thawed out, they bake at 350 for about 30 minutes. If it's frozen, then you can pop it in at 400-ish for as long as it takes to heat it through. Everything in it is already cooked. There's no raw egg or anything in this. It's cooked chicken, cheese, and all that other stuff. So you don't have to really worry about cooking the chicken. So you just have to heat it through. Okay, everything's all smoothed out now. 2 of them are in the oven. I like to use these aluminum lids. It's a little bit sturdier than foil, and you just you just put it on, and then you use your finger to crimp it down so it has this edge. So you just crimp it down, and then you just label it, and it's ready to go. It makes it easier when you have to stack a bunch of the trays. It just gives it a little bit of extra stability. Okay, all of the chicken divans are covered and labeled, ready to go into the freezer. I will be linking up the recipe below that I use for this with all of the modifications that I normally make, so you don't have to guess about it at all. And I hope that you enjoy making it. We sure enjoy having it in our freezer. It's one of those meals that everybody in the family loves, so it just makes life easier.